Welcome back. Well, if you've been following along, we're making some super accurate ammo, showing you all the steps that are necessary. Let me explain first of all, if you're just joining in, we've prepared these cases in a rather generic way. In other words, what any reloader would have to do. They've been resized, whether they're neck sized only or full length resized, and they've been trimmed to the appropriate length that they can be fired in the chamber. And also, I went to one extra step of deburring the flash holes, which provides a modicum of extra accuracy. That brings me to the point. There is a hierarchy in accuracy. Not all steps are equal in terms of what they achieve. By far, far and away, the most important aspect, aside from the rifle is very important, but we're talking only about the ammo here. Far and away, the most important aspect is the particular powder you use and the charge that's used for that particular rifle. That is, more than anything else, the biggest player. You can have a rifle which is capable of shooting half MOA, half-inch groups at 100 yards, which will shoot 3- and 4-inch groups with the wrong powder and with the wrong charge. That's very, very common. I've seen that many times with many loads that I've done. So the powder is the top dog. Bullets are no longer as important as they used to be, where at one time bullets were, so poorly manufactured that, when they came up with match-grade bullets, Sierra match-grade bullets, they were the king of the hill. But right now, you can very easily find hunting-grade bullets that will shoot almost alongside match-grade, Match King bullets. Not quite, certainly not quite as accurately, but very, very accurately. It's not uncommon for, standard 30-30 bullets and 35 Remington bullets, the bullets themselves. I'm not talking about the cartridge, but I'm talking about the bullets. The bullets to be so well made that they can shoot easily sub-MOA. So anyway, where we are now is we're going to talk about, we're starting to get into the minutia. Now, there's several of these little minutia that will help. By themselves are rather insignificant, but together they will create a higher accuracy. So if you have, if you achieve 1/8 of an inch more accuracy with each one of these little details, 4 of them together, you got a half inch. You got a half inch of improvement, and it can sometimes be more than that. Concentricity of the bullet within the case is very important if you really want to have high accuracy. Let's show you just illustrate in gross terms what that means. Here you're looking down to the top of the case, and you've got a case which is essentially not concentric. This is very, very common, and you'll have, with domestic cases, Remington, Winchester, and Federal, you could have runouts of as much as 2.5 thousandths of an inch or more from one side to the other. That means that even if you have a perfectly centered case, because the case has been fire formed to the chamber, as a matter of fact, by fire forming it, you're forcing that bullet to be off center. It's offside, and that bullet is going to encounter one side of the rifling before it encounters the other. So that can be a very, very important, significant factor. Not all brass has that error. Lapua brass, most of your European, Scandinavian brass, normal brass, Lapua top dog stuff, Seiko top dog stuff, they have virtually no run out. So you'll have almost perfect concentricity with that particular ammo and with that brass. But if you're using more reasonably priced brass, you can achieve that same concentricity by doing a simple neck turning process. Let me address that. I know that right now I've gotten quite a few comments from people who have said that right now there's a particular competitor. I'm not going to mention his name. I'm very well aware of who he is. That has done a survey and says that he doesn't neck turn, and he doesn't know of any competitors in F-class shooting that neck turn. Well, first of all, I adhere to one particular rule. I don't pay attention to what a competitor says when he's competing, because whatever he wants you to do may not necessarily be in your best interest if he's trying to beat you. So I don't listen to that so much. The other thing is, he's in all likelihood, anybody who's really in a competition class where he's winning trophies, he's going to be buying the good stuff. He's going to be buying the Lapua brass, and he's got to be buying the Norma brass or the Seiko brass, whatever it is that really shoots superbly. So it doesn't need to have neck turning, because there is nothing to turn off the necks. There's no high side. But there are certainly, for the average shooter, you're dealing with brass like this. You're also going to be dealing with this sort of thing, where it's not necessarily just a simple, run out. It can be distortion all around. It can be lumps on the side of the brass. The case, the neck can actually have high sides in more than one spot, and that's not uncommon. How much of a difference can that make if you've got a standard rifle and standard ammunition? Well, it can run the gamut. Again, if you're neck sizing only from shot to shot, that means that your case has been fire formed to your chamber, and that only works if you're using the same brass in the same chamber all the time, because you can't interchange one fire formed brass to another chamber. They're just not going to work. They won't seat. The thing is that if you fire form them, then you are aligning the case perfectly concentric with the center of the chamber. But if that, as I said, if that case neck is off kilter, if it has run out, it's going to then position that bullet so it's not looking down the middle of the bore. That bullet's going to strike the edge of the rifling on one side before it strikes the other. And how much more it does on one shot from the other can grossly affect accuracy. Now, if you're not fire forming your cases, that's quite another story, because your cases don't go into the chamber and situate themselves concentrically. They go into the chamber and they're basically the slave of either gravity or whatever the bolt does, however the bolt influences the brass. If you've got a controlled feed bolt, such as a Winchester Model 70 or a Mauser 98 style bolt, see if I can do this here. That case is sitting without influence. It's positioned when that case goes into the chamber. There's no influence on that. There's no influence on that bolt whatsoever to distort the positioning of the case. But if you've got a Remington, or if you've got a push feed style bolt action, which has a plunger, which, see, this one here does not extract. This extracts with the bolt, but ejects because there's a plate inside the back of the bolt, inside the back of the receiver, that strikes the base of the case and flips it out when the bolt is all the way back. But there's no internal stresses on that cartridge while it's in the chamber. A push feed bolt operates an entirely different way. There's a plunger which pushes on one side of the case while an extractor claw is pulling on the other side of the case. And it's always trying to, even before you go to extract, it's always trying to do the push-pull routine so that that case is situated, it's cocked inside the chamber. So it's not even looking straight down the bore. That doesn't make any difference if you've got a perfectly sized case within the chamber, if you've got fire-formed cases. But it certainly makes a difference if you're using non-fire-formed cases, which are just lazily sitting in the chamber, and they can move several thousandths of an inch one side or the other. Then you're going to have a case which is cocked, angled sideways in that chamber. So keep that in mind. Most of the things that we try to endeavor to do at this particular point rely on having everything concentric within the chamber. So this is why it's so important. If you really want the utmost in accuracy, you have to have a fire-formed case, and you have to keep the fire-formed case aligned with that chamber, which is what the whole point of the process is. Once you've done that, you have positioned, and you eliminate the runout in the case neck. You have then positioned the point of the bullet down the center, the center of the bore. If you have no interest in gaining this extra, the cumulative total of all these things, which I call super accurate ammo, might only result in maybe an extra half or 3/4 of an inch of accuracy. So if you're not interested in that extra degree of accuracy, you don't even have to bother watching this. But all these things accumulated together can result in changing a MOA rifle, or say a 1 1/4 inch rifle, into a 3/8 of an inch rifle very, very easily by simply shaving off an 1/8 of an inch at a time, or a 1/4 of an inch at a time in some cases. So these cases are very uniform. I tested one on my neck turner, and I took off less than a 1/2 thousandths of an inch on. In fact, I had to take it off almost the entire 2/3 of the way around to even be able to scuff off any brass. I don't know if you can see that, but if I bring it too close, the camera's not going to focus. But there's only one very, very small spot here that didn't get trimmed, and that's indicative of the fact that there's very little run out all the way around. I barely was able to touch the cutter to the case that would take any brass off, and it went almost all the way around. So these Starline cases, at least this particular one, was very, very uniform in that regard. So I probably wouldn't bother to dress these cases for that small amount for a 1/2 thousandths of an inch. What is a 1/2 thousandths of an inch? Well, this piece of paper here, this standard computer paper that you can buy at Walmart, or Staples. This is almost 4 thousandths of an inch thick, and you know how thin this paper is. So we're talking about an eighth of the thickness of this particular paper. 1/2 thousandths of an inch is less than an eighth of a thickness. This is almost 4 thousandths of an inch thick. So we're not talking about that much of an offset. But we're talking about making super accurate ammo, so we're going to bring you over to the Forster neck turner, and we'll show you it was previously a case trimmer, but now it's going to be a neck turner. So let's step over and check that out. There are several steps to the conversion. First of all, I'm replacing this. This is the pilot. See if I can get back here so you're focused. But this is the case trimming pilot, and the case trimming pilot is very, very short, and its only purpose is to keep the case aligned while you're trimming off the brass on the end of the case, on this end right here. Now, I'm replacing that with a neck turning pilot. This pilot is very long, and it's 277 diameter, which is the same diameter as the bullet itself. And this is made by Forster also as part of their kit for conversion. And this pilot here will support the case as the outside of the case is being cut, so that the case doesn't collapse under it. Now, I'm also, instead of just having this collar here, which determines the length that I cut the brass, this is also going to determine the distance that I will cut the neck. The first thing I'm going to do is insert this. There's a little plate right here. This plate has got an angled cut on the end of it, and there's a very thin piece of spring steel, and this angled end right here engages this cam, and this cam right here determines the depth to which I'm running my cutter. And I'll show you how that works. It's a very handy deal. So I'm going to take that plate and I'm going to put with the angled end. The angled end is going to go out toward me, and I'll just simply, there's a cut that Forster makes in their base here, and it just slides. It simply slides right in. Slide it in all the way until it comes to the end. Then I'm going to take my cam, and I'll put that with the cam side toward the machine here, and you can see that cam will now, as I turn that cam, it allows that shaft to move in and out at a regulated pace. Now I'm going to take the cutter, and the cutter right here, you can see this has got a carbide. It's got a carbide cutter right here. It's just a round cylinder, and that's welded to a set screw. And this set screw is also got some. It's also got some serious resistance so that it doesn't turn easily. In other words, it's got a type of Loctite that's synthetic Loctite, which is on that thread, so that you don't turn it very easily. It's very hard to turn. The adjustments that are made on this cutter are not made in turns. They're made in fractions of a turn, down to like a tenth of a turn. You're moving that cutter with the degree of pitch that you have on that thread. You're moving that cutter quite a lot by just turning it a fraction of a turn. So we're going to put that cutter onto the shaft and position the cutter so that it's probably about 1/8 of an inch or so from the end of the pilot, and we're going to tighten that down. So the cutter itself is, as a matter of fact, if you were to position this end of the base, the body, from the end of the pilot, you're just about right. So we're going to tighten that down securely with an Allen wrench. You don't want that to move. Now, let me move this in just a little bit so you can see more clearly. That cutter is positioned the thickness that you desire to have your brass. That's how far away from the pilot is positioned. And you can use the same cutter for many different calibers. I've used the same cutter for 22 caliber all the way up to 30 caliber. I haven't done anything that's larger than 30 caliber. I'm not sure if it would even accommodate that, but those are your accuracy class cartridges. So, but I position that so that it's basically the distance that's necessary. One thing that's imperative is to have lubrication on your. You must have those cases lubricated, because that we're talking about creating a. I'm going to put on lubrication on my fingers, which is Lee Lube. It doesn't hurt to put on plenty. And by having that lubrication on this brush, this is a case neck brush. This is not just your standard brush. It's a nylon case neck brush. So I'll put that lubricant on there, and I'm going to lubricate each of these cases. And back it off so you can see. I'll go down the line and lubricate all those cases, because that pilot is going to drag, and you don't want to have galling of the inside of your brass. So I'll continue to lube up all these cases. Usually, if I lube that brush up really good, I can continue to go along and do all the cases without any. If I find that they're starting to drag, then I'll just add a little bit more lubricant. So that's it. I'll bring it back in. Now, it's just a matter of positioning the case in the brown and sharp collet back here, and tighten it up. And that's what's nice about a brown and sharp collet. When that tightens, it's tight. It's just like what a lathe has. It requires a little bit of force to get that started, because you're pushing a bullet size pilot into that case, and that's the same amount of neck tension that you would have if you were running a bullet in. So, and brass is springy, so even after I've done this, that'll spring back to its normal. I've already got this set, so I can run this all the way to the end. You don't want to run into the shoulder. You want to position that cutter so that it doesn't run into the shoulder. Once I get it to that point, I don't care how many turns I take. I just simply run it in. Now I take this cam, and I use that cam with one hand and turn it gradually, and you can see it's backing that cutter toward me. It's very systematic. So I just run the cutter all the way up to the shoulder and then back it off, and I've unthreaded it. In other words, that cutter has walked itself back along that case and creates a perfectly concentric neck. I don't know if you can see there's difference in the color here. This is bright yellow where it was just cut, and you can see there's a dull yellow, the dull brass where it wasn't cut. So it took it off. It took it off about half of the diameter of that neck, and that's sufficient. All you need to do really is to remove the high side. You really never want to go beyond that. You don't want to cut into the low side, because if you're cutting into the low side, you're going to have dramatically thin brass, and it's neither safe nor is it good for accuracy. So you want to have we'll put this one in here, and we'll do another one. We'll show you. As you can see now, I'm going to push this tight, tighten up my head. I'm just going to run this in. Now, once I get to the end, I'm going to use the cam, and turning the cam as I spin the shaft, I'm turning that cam gradually and it's backing it off very nicely, and there it is. It's gone. So we just keep on doing that. It's a very simple process. Again, just wind it in randomly, then use the cam to, I'm turning this cam with my thumb and forefinger with the other hand, and just simply backing it out. Do a couple more before I lose my voice totally. So again, just winding it in. When I get to the base, just turn that cam. You can hear it scuffing off the brass with that carbide cutter. So there you go. That's where we've achieved near perfect concentricity. It would be perfect concentricity if I cut it 360 degrees around, but I don't want to do that because we're only taking off a half a thousandth, and to take off more than that, I'd be cutting into brass, which is perfectly good. There's no need whatsoever. So there you go. In the next 4 or 5 minutes, I'll finish turning all those cases, and Is it worth it to do that? Well, again, that's entirely up to you. The difference that it can make in accuracy for just fully sized cases probably doesn't amount to that much, because fully sized cases just fit sloppily in the chamber, and that extra amount of brass that you remove that makes things concentric can have some degree of, it can have some degree of influence, but it's going to be largely offset by the fact that your case is just sitting lazily in the chamber, and it's going to be positioning the bullet all which ways. And especially if you have a push-pull situation with that, with a push-feed style ejection system. Now, if you're looking for the utmost in accuracy, and that's what this is all about, this is how to make super accurate ammo. So if you're trying to make super accurate ammo, this is what I do. It does make a difference. All these small little details do accumulate to make a big difference in the long run. So I found that all these things that I do are the things that create a rifle that shoots, 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch rather than simply 3/4 to 1.5 inches. It makes that kind of difference. But you have to kind of pay attention to all these steps as we go. We're finished with the brass at this point. Now we're going to start loading. So in my next episode, we'll show you what we do to start figuring that process out. For all my Patreon donors, thank you so much for your support. Your help is, your financial help is tremendous. It helps me do these things. I mean, to buy bullets and all these things that I can bring you these videos in these very costly days. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Hit that subscription button right now and hit the bell so you know when I'm around. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and God bless.